Today's story is so terrifying and surreal that it seems fictional, but it is reality, and it happened not long ago. It's the story of lobotomy, a surgical technique that was intended to cure psychiatric problems based on perforations in the brain, and that was applied to thousands of defenseless patients. At that time, the mental institutions were saturated with patients who didn't know how to treat. The first neurological drugs wouldn't appear until decades later, and the most recurrent treatment was electroshock, which was based on the curative effect of coma and seizures induced by electric shocks. There was no risk of death, but patients often ended up with several broken bones. In the 1930s, at a neurosurgery congress in London, an experiment was carried out with two chimpanzees. They presented symptoms of anxiety and neurosis. The frontal lobe of the brain was removed, and in one of them these symptoms disappeared, showing more docile and calm. One of the attendees, the Portuguese neurologist Egas Moniz, was so impressed by the experiment that he decided to study how to apply it to humans. Months later, Moniz developed a surgical technique that he applied to a group of 20 patients suffering from neurotic and anxiety disorders. It consisted of drilling 2 holes in the front or side of the skull and injecting alcohol into the cortex of the brain to kill a part of it. Later, he would improve the intervention use of a leucotome, which he inserted into the hole, and with its rotation, sectioned slices of the brain, depending on the severity of the patient. Moniz and his team analyzed the immediate evolution of the patients and confirmed success. 7 had been cured, and 7 had shown improvement, while another 6 had simply not changed. They published the results, legitimizing lobotomy as a treatment, and years later Moniz received the Nobel Prize in Medicine. Unfortunately, in 1939, one of his patients, dissatisfied with his treatment, fired 8 shots at him, leaving him paralyzed for the rest of his life. The United States was the country where the most lobotomies were performed, and the culprit behind its popularity was the psychiatrist Walter Freeman, who performed thousands of operations despite not being a surgeon. He used a faster technique, which involved inserting an ice pick-like awl through the eye socket and rotating it to destroy the frontal lobe's connection to the rest of the brain. It was performed in a maximum of 15 minutes, and it didn't require special care, so it could be done outside the operating room. Thanks to this, Freeman began to offer this service at home, traveling around the country in a van he called the Lobotomobile. His method was advertised in the newspapers and on television, and patients came to queue. It's estimated that he performed almost 2,500 lobotomies, and there were days when he performed up to 25 daily. In total, more than 5,000 people were lobotomized in the US, and between 40,000 and 50,000 worldwide. Freeman believed that the frontal lobe contained the individual's personality, but emotion resided in the thalamus. In the mentally ill, the thalamus predominated over the rest and caused the obsessions. The lobotomy severed some nerves in the brain, eliminating that predominance and stabilizing the personality. As advertised, it was used to treat depression, schizophrenia, neurosis, anxiety, and communism. But the truth is that the lobotomy annals the personality of the patients, leaving them in a state similar to that of a zombie. They no longer presented anxiety or agitation, but because they were totally indifferent to the world around them, mired in apathy. Mortality was not high, but over time many had serious brain damage, such as mental retardation or a vegetative state. Even so, the lobotomy continued to be practiced because there was a third part of those intervened who improved their symptoms, and because there was no alternative treatment other than perpetual confinement in a mental institution. Precisely, the detractors affirmed that lobotomy was simply used to calm and make mental patients more manageable. Some cases of intervened became very known, like that of Howard Dully, lobotomized at just 12 years old, and who as an adult in 2007 published his memoirs, in which he explained his life between prison and alcoholism. Or that of Rosemary Kennedy, younger sister of the famous president and mentally disabled, who was lobotomized and abandoned in a sanatorium by her father, so that she wouldn't harm the public image of the family. Starting in the 1950s, other less aggressive treatments began to be used. With the discovery of chlorpromazine, the effectiveness of the medication was greatly improved, and lobotomy was discontinued. Freeman performed his last lobotomy in 1964, when a patient who was undergoing surgery for the 3rd time died of hemorrhage caused by the operation. The rest of his life was spent studying and monitoring his patients to try to prove that his methods worked. However, it was shown that lobotomy was only 10% effective, and instead caused irreversible sequelae in most people. With these data in hand, a group of relatives of those affected has been demanding that the Swedish Academy withdraw the Nobel Prize in Medicine from Egas Moniz, considering that his achievement has caused more harm than good. Lobotomy may seem like a horror story from the past, but the truth is that it continued to be practiced until almost the 1980s. Fortunately, today we know much more about the functioning of the brain and the fundamental role that the frontal lobes have in the very essence of our personality.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it. And if you want to see more Draw My Life videos, subscribe to our channel. See you on the next episode.